The doctor said the word aggressive like he was reading me a weather report. No shift in tone. No apology. Just that, it's an aggressive subtype. That was the moment everything split. Not loudly, like an explosion. Quietly, like a floorboard giving way under your feet. My name is Trent Walker. I'm 34, a high school history teacher from Decatur, Georgia. I've been married for 8 years, and I used to think that meant something. That love, real love, meant showing up, especially when life got hard. It was one of those late summer Georgia afternoons where the heat clung to your skin like a punishment. I had parked in the shade near Emory Medical, but by the time I got back to the car, I was drenched in sweat and dread. The folder in my hand felt heavier than it should have. My mind kept looping the phrase, early intervention. I called Camille from the parking lot. Told her I had news and asked if she could meet me at home. Her voice came through my speaker sharp and distracted. She was busy with a client, something about a contract running late. Can we do it later tonight? She said. She didn't ask what the news was. I sat in the car for a few minutes longer than I should have, watching raindrops start to pepper the windshield like tiny exclamation points from the sky. I should have known then. Camille had always been a little precise. That was the word I used when people asked. She liked everything in its place, clean, minimal, curated. Her Instagram looked like a magazine layout. Her coffee was oat milk only, her friends had aesthetic brunches, and she once threw out a hoodie I loved because it had holes in the sleeves. She loved to be seen as kind, dropped off dog food at shelters, donated blood, posted videos of herself folding blankets at disaster drives. But at home, kindness had rules. And mess, emotional or physical, was unwelcome. That night, when I walked into our apartment, the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not quiet, silence. The kind that hums in your ears. The air felt wrong. Cold, even though the AC wasn't running. I kicked off my shoes and went to the bedroom. That's when I saw the closet. Her side, empty. Hangers swinging a little like they'd been touched just seconds before. One drawer half open. The framed honeymoon photo from Turks and Caicos. Gone from the wall. My stomach dropped, but my body just moved. I walked back to the living room, checked the table. No note. Just a small stack of mail and a coaster where her wine glass used to rest. Then my phone buzzed. One message. 5 words. I can't do this. Sorry. Below it, a screenshot of our joint savings account, zeroed out. A red bar across the top said transfer complete. $47,200. Gone. No explanation. No warning. No voice. I stood there for a full minute, blinking like the room might rearrange itself into something that made sense. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't even find my breath. I sat on the floor, back against the kitchen counter, still clutching the Emory folder in one hand and my phone in the other. The storm outside had turned the sky an almost violent shade of blue-gray. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. I remember looking at the photo on the fridge, us, 2 years ago, in front of my old Toyota Land Cruiser, her in that ridiculous sun hat she insisted on wearing. I remember how tightly I had been holding her. I couldn't stop thinking, what kind of person walks away from someone the day they learn they might die? But even then, I didn't cry. I just stared at the folder. Then at the door. Then back at the fridge. Something had broken. Not loudly. Just enough to let the cold air in. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch with my phone on my chest and the Emory folder still on the coffee table. The apartment felt bigger without her, like her absence had pushed the walls outward. I could hear everything. The hum of the fridge. A faucet dripping in the guest bathroom. My dog, Winston, pacing in the hallway like he was searching for her scent. I wanted to believe she was coming back. Maybe she panicked. Maybe something scared her. Maybe she just needed time. I stared at the message she sent, rereading it so many times the screen burned it into my eyes. I can't do this. Sorry. Not, I love you. Not, we'll figure it out. Just, that. At 3 a.m., I opened the bedroom drawer she always kept locked. It was empty, not even dust. I checked the closet again. Her boxes of yoga gear, the shoe rack she assembled herself, the silk robe she only wore after long showers, all gone. What stayed were the things that didn't matter. A book she hated. A pair of cracked sunglasses. A burned-out candle. By morning, I was numb. I called into school, said I'd be out for the rest of the week. Principal Adler didn't ask questions. He just said, "Take care of yourself, Trent," in that slow, measured voice old men use when they suspect there's more to the story. I tried calling Camille once. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I made eggs I couldn't eat and opened our shared laptop. I logged into the bank account again just to be sure. The red transfer bar was still there. The confirmation still time-stamped. 7:02 p.m., the same time I had been driving home from Emory. I opened our photo folder next, clicked through the digital scrapbook she insisted we keep. Our anniversary trip to Asheville. My graduation. Her cousin's wedding. Smiles so wide they looked fake now. Then I saw it. A subfolder I hadn't noticed before, Q4 campaigns. Camille did freelance marketing work, mostly remote. She never talked much about her clients, just contracts and analytics. Inside the folder were dozens of receipts, hotels, dinners, Uber rides. One name showed up again and again. Reuben Wallace. A real estate guy she'd networked with at a conference last spring. I clicked on a photo dated 2 months ago. It wasn't a campaign. It was a dinner. Candlelit. Her dress tight and familiar. His hand on hers. Something in my chest cracked. Not broke, cracked, like a window that was about to give. The thing is, betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just hums under your skin, low and persistent. I closed the laptop and sat still for a long time, staring at the rain sliding down the window. I remembered something she once said in passing. I just need life to feel curated, you know. Not messy. I used to think she meant chaos. I think now she meant me. 3 days later, the silence started to rot. Not just in the apartment, but in my body. I'd lost 7 pounds without trying. My skin looked gray. My joints ached from both stress and the early rounds of steroids they'd started me on. But it wasn't the illness that broke me. It was the envelope. It came in a stiff white mailer, addressed to me in Camille's handwriting, as if she couldn't be bothered to have her lawyer do it. Inside was a 2-page letter and a thumb drive taped to a post-it. I didn't know how to say this face to face, it began. I need space. I can't be your caretaker. That's not who I am. I'm not built for this kind of life. I've already moved in with Reuben. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. She'd used that line again. Don't make this harder. As if my existence, my sickness, was a burden she was being gracious enough to avoid. The thumb drive contained files, her financial disclosures, a draft settlement, and a list of shared items she wanted, including the apartment, my truck, and the Vitamix blender her mom gave us. I stared at that last one the longest. The blender. It wasn't worth more than $300. But she wanted it like it meant something. Like it was proof she was owed. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just slid the letter across the table to Evelyn. Evelyn was a third-year law student I'd mentored during her undergrad. We used to grab coffee once a month and talk about civil rights law and school politics. She'd shown up with soup the first week I started chemo and hadn't missed a Sunday since. She read the letter quietly, then looked up at me. You know we can bury her in this, right? Her calm rattled me. I expected sympathy. What I got was strategy. We spent the next week building a case. She reached out to her professor, who had friends in medical ethics law. They pulled my medical records, cross-referenced the date of my diagnosis with the transfer Camille made, and dug into her business expenses. Turned out, she and Ruben had booked a weekend spa retreat in Savannah the same day I'd had my biopsy. Everything became evidence. And yet, the breaking point wasn't the letter. It was a photo. One of Camille and me, taped to the back of the fridge for years, one of those cheap drugstore prints. We were both laughing. Real laughter. She had wine in her hand, and I had my arm around her like I couldn't believe my luck. I stared at that photo for a long time, until the edges curled under my fingers. Then I threw it away. Not with rage. Not even with sadness. Just quiet finality. Later that night, I walked Winston a few blocks to clear my head. Carl, the janitor from my school, spotted me and crossed the street. He didn't say anything. Just handed me a paper bag. Oranges. I know what chemo does to taste, he said. These are sweet enough you might still feel human. He didn't ask questions. He didn't mention Camille. He just stood there while I tried not to fall apart on the sidewalk. Sometimes, the most generous thing someone can do is not leave. By October, the leaves had started to fall. Bright red and gold blanketed the sidewalks like confetti from a party I hadn't been invited to. Atlanta has this thing in fall, crisp mornings that almost trick you into hope. But the hope never lasted long. I'd started my third round of chemo. My hair came out in clumps. I'd buzzed what was left off in the bathroom, using Camille's old mirror. She used to complain that it made her look washed out. The irony didn't escape me. I moved into the guest room. It was easier than waking up to the hollow in our bed. I boxed up the rest of her things, scarves, cosmetics, one old yoga mat with a hole in the corner. Everything smelled like the past, lemon lotion and that shampoo she bought from some influencer she used to follow religiously. I didn't cry. I just labeled the box "Do Not Open." People around me didn't know what to say. Some tried anyway. She probably just panicked. You need to focus on your recovery. At least now you know who she really is. They meant well. But each phrase felt like a band-aid over a bullet wound. What no one really said, what I had to learn the hard way, is that grief isn't just for the dead. You grieve people who are still walking around. Laughing. Posting brunch selfies. Pretending they didn't get you. At school, I was on leave, but Mrs. Bradford, our school librarian, checked in weekly. She brought ginger tea in an old thermos with my name on it in Sharpie. Said her brother had gone through something similar. Marcus, a former student of mine, started walking Winston twice a day. He never stayed long. Just a nod, a leash handoff, and a quiet, "Hang in there, Mr. W." The apartment became a pattern of survival: wake up, puke, hydrate, nap, shower, repeat. Sometimes, I'd catch myself still reaching for her toothbrush on the shelf. Or expecting her keys to jingle in the door. The ghost of routine lingers longer than love. One night, I stood in the kitchen, holding the Vitamix blender. The one she demanded in the settlement draft. I plugged it in, dropped in a banana, ice, a splash of almond milk. Watched it roar to life. And for some reason, I laughed. Hard. Not because it was funny. But because I realized I didn't need to give it to her. I didn't need to give her anything. That blender wasn't a symbol of her victory. It was mine. Because I was still here. Still breathing. Still standing in my kitchen while she was off pretending to live a better life. The world didn't cheer for me. No medals. No big emotional speeches. But that night, I made myself a smoothie. Sat on the couch. Watched the rain. And decided, she doesn't get to take one more thing from me. The text came during infusion number 5. Blocked number. No punctuation. Just. I made a mistake, can we talk? I stared at it for a while, blinking through the nausea. The nurse adjusted the line in my arm, gave me a sympathetic smile, like she'd seen this kind of message before. Maybe she had. Maybe this was a pattern, people leave when it's hard, then come crawling back once it looks survivable. I didn't reply. 2 weeks later, she showed up. I just finished treatment. My legs were shaky, but I was standing, holding onto the rail outside the hospital entrance when I saw her. Camille. Hair curled, makeup perfect, blouse tucked just enough to show she still knew how to dress for sympathy. Her eyes glistened like someone who practiced crying in the mirror. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at me like I was the one who had explaining to do. I've been thinking, she finally said, voice soft like we were still inside our apartment, like nothing had burned to the ground. I didn't answer. I panicked, she said. I didn't know how to process what was happening. I'm not built for hospitals, Trent. I just shut down. I nodded slowly. Not because I agreed. But because it was the only thing keeping me from yelling. You left me the day I got diagnosed, I said. Not the day I got sick. The day I needed you the most. She blinked fast. You don't understand. No, Camille. You don't. Something shifted in her posture then. Like the performance cracked. Her voice sharpened. You've changed, she said, almost like an accusation. I tilted my head. No. I just stopped trying to impress someone who only wanted the highlight reel. There it was. The silence. The one where you can hear people around you, cars, distant chatter, a baby crying from inside the lobby, but none of it matters. I turned to walk away, but she grabbed my arm. Please. I made a mistake. I pulled free gently, my voice low. No. You made a choice. Over and over again. And now, you're here because it didn't work out with Ruben. Not because you care. Her lips parted, then closed again. I walked to the parking lot without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing there, arms crossed like she was cold. But it wasn't the weather. It was the first time she was truly alone. That night, I called Evelyn. Told her it was time. No mercy, she asked. None, I said. We filed everything, timeline of the withdrawal, medical records, the texts, even the spa trip receipts. Her lawyer folded within days. The settlement evaporated. Camille walked away with nothing. No car. No apartment. No blender. Just her name on a court document under, abandonment during medical crisis. But even as I signed the final papers, my hands didn't shake. I didn't smile. Some victories don't feel like triumphs. They feel like closing a door you never wanted to open in the first place. After the court date, there wasn't applause. No dramatic soundtrack. Just me, sitting in the back of Evelyn's old Honda, listening to the hum of traffic while the rain streaked sideways across the windshield. She asked if I wanted to get a drink. I said no. My stomach couldn't hold anything heavier than ginger ale, and besides, I didn't want to celebrate something I never wanted to win. Word got around. A few teachers from school sent emails. Mr. Hargrove from math said, glad justice was served. Ms. Perry dropped off a card that said you're stronger than you think. But strong wasn't how I felt. I felt hollow. Like everything had been sucked out, leaving behind a version of myself I didn't recognize. Drew, my older brother, called that weekend. He'd been quiet through most of it, military guy, not big on words, but that night, he stayed on the line for over an hour. You did the right thing, he said. You held the line. Then he paused. But I gotta ask, man, what now? What now? That was the question that haunted me. I had no more court dates. No one left to confront. No voicemails to check, no unread texts to obsess over. Camille was a ghost. And in her absence, I expected peace. But what came first was anger. Not the loud kind, not plates thrown or walls punched. Mine came in waves. I'd snap at Winston for barking at squirrels. I'd curse at the broken dishwasher. I'd stare at the ceiling fan for hours, replaying everything I should have said to her, the comebacks, the truth, the rage I swallowed to look like I had it together. One night, I sat on the floor of the guest room and screamed into a pillow until my throat hurt. Not because I wanted her back. But because I wanted me back. The next morning, I threw out the last of her things. Not in a dramatic fire pit or down a garbage chute. Just walked them to the curb in 3 neat boxes. A guy from 2 floors down picked through them an hour later. Took the blender. Good. Friends told me to move on. Go travel, one said. Sign up for dating apps, another joked. But I didn't want to be told how to heal. I wanted to sit in my grief without someone narrating my next step. So I stopped returning calls for a while. Skipped social invites. Focused on breathing, eating what little I could, and walking Winston. Evelyn checked in once a week. Carl dropped off oranges without knocking. That was enough. It was during one of those walks, early morning, fog still low, Winston sniffing every mailbox, that something shifted. Not dramatically. Just a thought. She doesn't get to define what's left. Not the silence. Not the pain. Not the terms. I was still here. And maybe that was the only thing I needed to be. 6 months post-chemo, the world came back in pieces. First, it was food, actual hunger, not just the obligation to eat. I made pancakes one morning and didn't gag at the smell. That felt like a miracle. Then my hair started returning in patches. A little thicker at the crown. A little wilder at the sides. Then it was sleep. Deep, dreamless, uninterrupted by nausea or ghosts. I didn't go back to our old apartment. I sublet it and gave away the furniture. Instead, I packed Winston into my truck and drove north. Found a quiet cabin just outside Asheville. Nothing fancy, wood stove, creaky porch, a view of trees that turned orange and gold without anyone needing to notice. I took a part-time position at a small community college. Nothing like the buzz of high school, but the kids are curious, raw. Some of them ask me if I used to be married. I just smile and say, once. That's enough. The rest of the time, I fish. I cook. I walk Winston through trails so quiet I can hear my breath. One morning, a letter came from Carl. Just a folded piece of notebook paper in an envelope with no return address. Proud of you, man. Told you, it's not about how many people are around when life is good. It's who stays when it falls apart. It hit harder than I expected. Because he was right. Evelyn went on to get her law degree. She sent me a photo of her graduation, smiling in her cap, holding a sign that said, "Justice is personal." I framed it and hung it near the window. I still think about Camille sometimes. Not with anger. Just distance. I saw once, months ago, that she got a new job out west. Her LinkedIn said, Head of Client Experience. I didn't click. I didn't care. The woman who left me didn't deserve a sequel in my story. And maybe that's what healing actually is. Not erasing the past, not pretending it didn't crack you open, but choosing what gets to remain. This morning, I repainted the old porch swing. It took me 2 hours and half a cup of coffee. My hands shook a little, still do, some days, but I did it. When I finished, I sat down and looked out at the woods, Winston curled at my feet like a warm rock. And I thought. I finally get to choose who has access to me. Not everyone gets a second chance at life. But if you do, let it be yours.